Hello and welcome. Today, we're gonna talk about the differences between the T-54 and the T-55. Even though they're often considered as pretty much the same tank and are always talked about together, I noticed that there's people who at first glance see some optical differences but don't actually know what's different. So in this video, we're going to uncover these differences and make them clear to you. And I hope you enjoy this video. Firstly, we need to distinguish between the different T-54 variants before we can differentiate them with the T-55. The 1947 version's turret looks more similar to the T-54 tank than the T-55. This is the first early version of the T-55.
Alright, I'm sorry guys, here I mixed a few things up. What I actually want to say is that the early version of the T-54, which was from 1947, looked more similar to the T-44 than the T-54 from 1949 and upwards. And the T-54 1947 was the first early version of the T-54 in general, and the successor of the T-44.
And it confuses quite a lot of people who look at this tank and just think, what the hell is that? The reason for this is because it's not the usual T-54 you see. If you were to Google right now T-54, it would most likely show you the 1949 and upwards models of the T-54 and maybe just a few images of the 1947 version. The 1947 model also had a machine gun for a driver which was mounted above the tracks, but it was very quickly removed in the next version. Then there's the T-54 1949, which looks more like the typical T-54 you'd imagine. I'm not gonna talk about the specifications of these versions as it's not primarily what this video is about. If you want me to make a video about that, let me know in the comments. Then there's also the T-54 1951, which is pretty much the last Soviet mass-produced version of the T-54. After that comes the T-55. Now, with you having some context about the different T-54 versions, let's talk about the differences between that and the T-55. The older T-54 has a dome-shaped ventilator on the front right of the turret that you don't see on later tanks, including all T-55s. Besides that, the T-54 had a driver-operated 7.62mm machine gun in the hull front. Something the T-54 was lacking was a fuel extractor on the main gun tube, something which was later added to the T-55. Unlike the T-55, the T-54 1949 also had sort of an undercut at the turret's rear, which the T-54 1951 and the T-55 didn't have because they were dome-shaped. The T-54 also had a pig snout gun mantlet. Another important thing that was added, or rather improved, with the T-55 was the nuclear, biological and chemical protection, short NBC protection. Reason why this was added was because the Soviet Union planned for the US to use tactical nukes against them in Europe, so they made sure their troops would be protected from such weapons. There were also some changes made on the ventilators and fuel extractors, but these varied a lot from tank version to tank version. There were and still are many different upgraded and modified versions of the T-54 and the T-55. Some other more significant differences between those two were that the T-55 had a fully stabilized gun, a turret basket, which meant the crew didn't have to physically turn their bodies with the turret, a fire suppression system and NBC protection. The T-55 was also the first Soviet tank to have NBC protection system. Later production of the T-54 and the T-55 had infrared night vision systems for the commander and the driver, including the iconic spotlights on the front of the turret. Something that was added to the T-55 was more additional ammo storage, including wet storage for high explosive shells. The early T-55s had no heavy machine guns mounted on top, but they were later added as attack helicopters became a greater threat. When it comes to the engine, most of it stayed the same except that the T-55 used a more powerful version of the same V12 diesel engine, which had 580 horsepower, as well as an improved transmission. Anyways, that was all I had to say for this video. If you think I said anything that is not right, or you think I should have added any additional information to this video, please let me know in the comments and share your knowledge. Besides that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.